Wrestling Roundtable Radio is back on the air at blogtalkradio.com/Wrestling Roundtable. Simulcast on WrestlingRoundtable.com and Go Fight Live. Hell, you can simulcast it yourself. Get the embedding code for our player over at blogtalkradio.com/Wrestling Roundtable. The number to call is 347-857-4647. And I'm glad to be back on the air talking to you because been off for a little bit, took a little hiatus, working in wrestling for the time being. Let's see what happens. And on top of that, of course, we've got more roundtable shows coming up. We taped recently on Edge's career, Macho Man's retirement, and looking back at old school UFC and the SEG years, and the retirement and career of Randy the Natural Couture. Looking back at the career of two Randys, pro wrestling and MMA. Those are going to be edited and uploaded soon. But, of course, if you've been following us here on blogtalkradio.com, something else that's been going on is now available is our entire archive. That's over 50 of our video shows in podcast form, and, of course, all previous 28 of our radio shows. So coming up on 80 shows altogether, and they're all available on blogtalkradio.com as they have been for a while now on iTunes. Thanks to Will Vafides, who is on our line tonight, and I'm going to introduce the panel in a little bit before I let you know some of the other things going on. But I just mentioned you, Will Vafides, TLD. What's going on, Will?
It's a lovely evening here in the East Coast. It's a nice cloudy evening. TLD is back on radio. I missed the radio shows for a while. It's great to be back. And a special announcement, mark it down in your calendars, March 18, 2012, TLD returns to the ring live. So make sure you all fly out from the West Coast, Puerto Rico, Germany, wherever you're from. And
wow, I think that might be more anticipated in the year-long build-up than The Rock's return that time.
Thank you.
Big returns next year in wrestling, TLD and The Rock. And you've never brought it up on the show, Will, and I'd like to, if you don't mind. I hope you don't mind, because there are links over at your bio at WrestlingRoundtable.com. But I'd like to actually mention W. Vafides Productions, because being a videographer myself, I find it really cool that you're able to do a lot of work and conversions and stuff like that, especially for old formats. I myself have old Super VHS tapes and 8mm and, of course, mini DVs as well. Everything's moving into the digital age now. I'm becoming a dinosaur, even with those old VHS tapes. Ugh. So you want to tell us a little bit about what you do with W. Vafides Productions?
I've been an editor for 7 years, and I just recently got into videography. I do weddings, Sweet 16s, bar mitzvahs. I've done some stuff for the Special Olympics as well, so I've done some of their videos. They're all on my Facebook page at WV Productions if you look it up. I got some great videos up there. I do really great professional work. I've done some roundtable tapings, some of the wrestling tapings. Very busy year for me moving on the Facebook page. If you ever have a business, just like we do at Wrestling Roundtable, you definitely want to get a Facebook page going, because that's how you get all your stuff seen. And things are really happening. A bunch of side work to do, moving forward in my career. And, yeah, I mean, definitely VHS tapes are fading. If you need your tapes transferred, definitely get them done before they fade away.
And I also want to thank you for maintaining our archive over at WrestlingRoundtablePodcast.com, or you can open up iTunes and just type Wrestling Roundtable. We'll be right there. Every show we've ever done, which, as I mentioned, is also available now on Blog Talk Radio. That's a big project I've been working on, so glad to have all of our past content available for you. And I never want to hear, again, everyone listening to us after the fact on YouTube instead of live, like I wish you would, on Blog Talk Radio and Go Fight Live, stop asking about when are you guys going to do best and worst finishers or tag teams or factions. Yeah, because it never occurred to us to do that. It's all in our first season, which you can find a listing for at WrestlingRoundtable.com. If you think we haven't covered something, we probably have. But speaking of videography and all the things you do, that reminds me of yet another videographer on the show, introducing Rodney LeConte. Hey, yo, Rod.
Hey, yo, Eric. Tonight was my first night trying to make chicken parmesan on my own, and wow, is it amazing. And also, at Best Buy this past weekend, they were selling the Tribute Theism DVD for $17.
You know what, man? I've said before on the show that this new digital age has killed my viewing habits for wrestling, because I don't even bother DVRing it and fast-forwarding it like everybody else. I just wait to see if something good happened, and then, all right, I'll look it up on YouTube the next day. And I'm telling you, between YouTube, DVR, and on-demand, and now Netflix, which we mentioned Netflix when we covered the WrestleMania DVD that came out, the documentary, The True Story. I don't know if I could ever go back to watching wrestling live again. Outside of, like, pay-per-views, you know what I mean? As far as MMA, I'm there live all the time, unless I don't have Showtime or if I miss it. When I first got Netflix and Married with Children was on there, I'm like, well, I guess I don't have to get the DVD sets anymore. But $17 is a good deal. $17 is a good deal. And I'm telling you, Rod, we have to start talking outside of this show.
I know. It's like, when's the last time we even went to Hooters for a wrestling event? We haven't. Someone will bring it up. I'm like, oh, the pay-per-view tonight? Oh, nice.
You know what? I'm not even down with Hooters anymore because Buffalo Wild Wings is where it's at. That's where I'm going now.
I've still never been there.
You told us on a recent show you hurt your back. How's your back doing?
Actually, my back is pretty much recovered 100%. I went for an X-ray around that time, and they came back negative, so there was nothing wrong with my back. I've just been put on some painkillers, and I've been training fine. I haven't had any pains when I woke up. Yeah, the back is okay.
Good, good. And what have you been up to lately? What's some of your latest projects?
Book is Sweet 16. I have a wedding coming up July 3rd, and I'm actually just been getting back into Grappling King.
Getting into what? I don't think I've ever heard of it.
Yeah, it's some documentary that I started like 20 years ago about, mission grappling and jiu-jitsu. But speaking of documentaries, Wrestling Road Diaries, I just wanted to support.
Thank you very much, and I hope everyone else does the same. In fact, now that you mention the Wrestling Road Diaries, we've been uploading some deleted scenes on our YouTube page. Those are exclusive, just to give you a taste of things to come. Now, I do want to point out that there's two versions of Wrestling Road Diaries. If you buy them live at shows like Ring of Honor, they're only the one-disc edition, which includes the entire documentary. That's 2 hours and 40 minutes or so. So that covers about 10 days' worth of On the Road with Colt Cabana, Sal Rinauro, and Daniel Bryan, as he is called in WWE, Bryan Danielson, and what turned out to be the final countdown tour as far as Danielson's indie run goes. It's kind of like the positive version, Rodney, of the Montreal Screwjob, because being that the documentary for Wrestling with Shadows was taping at Survivor Series 97 with the Screwjob, a lot of people think that it was set up. This whole Montreal was a work thing. I mean, they had the documentary cameras right there. Well, you know what? You know as a videographer, Will probably knows as a videographer too, sometimes when you're shooting, magic just happens and you just happen to be in the right place at the right time. We had already planned to shoot this, what was then routine tour of shows between Chicago, New Hampshire, New York, etc., and then Danielson signed with WWE. So it just happened to turn out that we were there to film his last matches. It wasn't planned like that. So that being said, you get 2 hours, 40 minutes or so of 10 days on the road. And if you spend just a few more dollars, I think it's $5 more, you get the 2-disc edition, which has, I think, about over an hour and 11 minutes worth of deleted scenes and lots of other extras too. So you're getting just about 4 hours worth of content. So if you love indie wrestling and are interested in seeing how life is on the road and see things behind the curtain, this is definitely the set for you, and you can get that at cultmerch.com or wrestlingroaddiaries.com. There's a couple more panelists to introduce. Will Brooks, who is in our chat room on wrestlingroundtable.com every Monday night during Raw. Hello, Will Brooks.
Hello, everybody, and I have an announcement to make. In T-minus 118 hours and 50 minutes, Season 4 of True Blood will come back on TV, and I cannot wait.
Okay. And our radio panelist from Chicago, Coriander Ake. Hello, Corey. I know you've got something going on you definitely want to let us know about.
Hello, everyone. I definitely do have a bit of an announcement myself. One of my cartoons is being used as part of a movie debuting in Louisville, Kentucky, known as The Last Summer, by filmmaker Jason Saint, who also works with OVW. There's going to be a huge premiere for the movie out in Louisville at the Davis Arena on August 27th. All of OVW will be in attendance, and my art will be on public display. You can catch more details at thelastsummer-movie.com.
Well, congratulations, Corey. Glad to see you're getting your work seen like that. She's not the only one getting stuff done. I wanted to mention before we move on to shows that our partners over at highspots.com, are now featuring Pro Wrestling Respect, the first two shows, Pro Wrestling Respect 1 Inaugural and Pro Wrestling Respect 2 Delirious vs. Ridge, hosted by myself and Brett Midge Simonello, and featuring Delirious, Daisy Hayes, and wrestlers from the ROH Wrestling Academy and more. Those are available now, as they have been on Go Fight Live, for video download, $4.95 for each. A good cheap option if you want to see my little take on pro wrestling. Not the booking per se, but definitely the presentation, and let's see how the Roundtable produced a wrestling show if you want to spend a few bucks and see the download. Highspots.com or GoFightLive.tv. While we're plugging stuff, Shane Hagedorn has a blog on eBlogger, 20-plus years of 32 pages. It's his blog on comic books, and you can get the link in his bio over at WrestlingRoundtable.com. Speaking of comic books, while we're talking about all this non-wrestling shit right here at the beginning, I want to mention X-Men First Class because I loved it. I thought it was absolutely great. Seen it twice already. Very big into that movie. But to relate it to wrestling just a little bit, I think 20th Century Fox went back into time about 17 years and got a very young John Cena, like 18 years old or whatever, to play Havoc. I think that's uncanny, but maybe that's just me. See? Uncanny. Anyway, let's get on to some of the latest shows that have happened in the world of mixed martial arts and pro wrestling. MMA first. UFC 130 took place at Las Vegas, Nevada's MGM Grand back on Saturday, May 28th. The first fight that I wanted to mention right off the bat, Rodney, was Travis Brown's first-round KO on Stefan Struve, because I like Stefan Struve, the giant of mixed martial arts, I think 6'11", towering over the cage. And I thought he was doing pretty well recently, but, oh, man, talk about a highlight reel knockout. A Superman punch just toppled this redwood. Your thoughts on Travis Brown's knockout?
Actually, I saw this knockout that night on ESPN SportsCenter. Holy shit. It looked like Stephen Struve's head should have went somewhere in the fifth row. I guess it's something his opponents always see where he looks like he's doing good and striking, like they did against Paul Bonatello, and he does use his reach, but I think he leaves a lot of openings, and I think Travis Brown just saw one of those openings, and man, did he get hit hard. Do I think his career's in jeopardy? No, this kid is still very young. He's still developing, and a fighter that people are excited to see. But I think the fight itself was pretty even up until that point.
I love Stefan Struve, mainly because he's from the Netherlands, my home country.
Have you ever been there?
Not as yet, but I'm first generation American, so.
Just checking.
But anyway. No, you know what? I love him a lot, but you know what? Every time I see him fight, he's lost. And it just seems like I get why they want to keep him. He's 6'11". He's only 23 years old. He's a lot of potential, but he hasn't really done anything. I think they need to kind of cut him and bring him back in a couple of years after he has more seasoning.
I don't know about that. I mean, he's won his past couple fights, and I think, like what Rodney was saying, I don't think this should lead to a cut per se, but Rodney, what do you think about what Will just said?
I don't see him being cut at all. I mean, he was on a little bit of a win streak. It's not like he gets knocked out every fight.
He's not Arlovsky.
Yeah, I mean, a guy like Travis Brown is unbeaten, so, I mean, that guy's on the rise. UFC knows that this kid's a tough fighter. I mean, remember his fight in Germany where he ended up winning the fight after being bloodied in, like, the first round. And this kid's got heart. He's young, and this heavyweight division is tough. And I think he's just really tall and lanky, and he just needs to really find a way to use that as an advantage against more powerful heavyweights in his division.
A heavyweight of another body type and form, definitely. Roy Nelson lost to Frank Mir by unanimous decision, and what seems to be a theme this year is guys going into the cage not 100%. Roy Nelson said he had walking pneumonia. Frank Mir said he had an injury in training and bronchitis, but I thought Mir looked pretty good in the weigh-ins. He looked like he trimmed up a little bit and looked pretty cut. Same for Roy Nelson. Just kidding. Dana White was giving Roy Nelson a lot of shit after this fight. We all know that he never liked Roy Nelson because of his body type, which I thought was actually an asset because he stood out. I know Pat on our message board hates Roy Nelson for the same thing, but as much as Dana White was ripping on Roy Nelson's performance, and he definitely did lose all 3 rounds. It was definitely a 30-27, if not less. He got taken down by Frank Mir. multiple times and didn't really do much, even though he's supposed to be known for his jiu-jitsu, this former IFL heavyweight champion. Now, is it fair to say that it's at least something to say that Roy Nelson was not finished in either this fight against Frank Mir or Junior Dos Santos? He went the distance with both of them. He was not knocked out or submitted. And is it something to point out that Frank Mir was able to finish huge guys like Brock Lesnar and Tim Sylvia, but not Roy Nelson, Rodney?
It has to do with Roy Nelson's toughness. Frank Mir wasn't as aggressive. He knows that Roy Nelson is very good on the ground. And when he finished guys like Tim Sylvia and Brock, they weren't as skilled on the ground as Roy Nelson. Mm-hmm. And Roy could take a lot of punches. I mean, you saw in the fight what kind of damage this guy could take. I mean, he got pretty close to being stopped in that fight. I mean, it was the last time this guy got stopped, when he fought under Arlovsky.
And I thought that was bullshit, because I thought they shouldn't have stood them up. I thought Nelson was working on the ground, and yeah, he got knocked out, but I think he was on his way to doing something in that fight. But as you were saying,
exactly. As a mixed martial artist, Frank Mir is better. I mean, Frank Mir looks like he's on a good track, beating two names, finishing Crow Cop and decisively beating Roy Nelson. But I just don't think that Roy Nelson is an easy guy to finish.
Well, yeah, he did finish Crow Cop, but if that knockout hadn't happened at the end, man, that would have been one of the worst main events in UFC history that didn't include Anderson Silva dancing, I guess. Will Brooks, your thoughts on the heavyweight showdown, Mir and Nelson?
First off, to compare Roy Nelson now to what Brock Lesnar was then is not very fair to Nelson. Nelson is a way better fighter than Brock Lesnar was then. Not now, but then. It's just more to Roy Nelson not being able to be finished by him or Dos Santos, who's Dos Santos' number one contender right now.
Well, I didn't mean to disparage anybody. I'm just saying that it's actually a compliment in a way, because Mir was able to beat these guys that were very big, bigger than him, and he wasn't able to beat Roy Nelson, and they were both sick. So I think Dana White's being a little harsh.
I think he's being very harsh. I have to agree with you. Him being a fat guy actually is kind of cool. I think it's funny. You know,
I think it's marketable.
Exactly. But it's only marketable if the guy wins. You can't market the fat loser.
Right. Well, I think he should get another chance. In the main event, light heavyweight, Quentin Rampage Jackson defeated Matt Hamill by unanimous decision. And, lots to say in relation to this fight, more than the fight itself, I think. I wasn't exactly blown away by it, but that's why I want to bring up one of the latest news stories, details at WrestlingRoundtable.com, and that is that after the August 6th event in Philadelphia, which has the Phil Davis-Rashad Evans fight, all UFC main events, whether a title is on the line or not, the last match of the night is going to go 5 rounds no matter what. And there are some questions there. For instance, this was not originally supposed to be the main event, which was supposed to be Edgar Maynard 3, so maybe everyone just needs to train as if they were going into 5 rounds now. I don't know. But this is a fight I really wouldn't have cared to see 2 more rounds of. I wasn't exactly blown away by it, and now that Rampage is getting the title shot against John Jones probably in October, I'm not feeling that. I don't think Rampage has looked that great in quite a while. Even though I scored the fight with Machida in Quentin's favor, it wasn't by much. I'm not seeing, definitely not the Rampage that we saw in Pride that they always use in the video packages. So what do you think about the Rampage victory over Matt Hamill, Rod?
Definitely not a pretty sight. And if I ordered the pay-per-view, I probably would have been a little bit disappointed. You think about how Matt Hamill got finished by Rich Franklin, and you think of Quentin Jackson being this much more powerful striker than Rich Franklin. He looked like he did try to finish him, but Matt Hamill is a tough kid. He didn't score not one takedown, and that just definitely shows Quentin Jackson's great wrestling defense. I mean, he completely shut Matt Hamill down. And I know there was a big part of me, and I know there's a big part of everybody else, who thought that it would have gone somewhat like the Hamill-Ortiz fight, where he just outpointed him with strikes and take him down a few times. But Quentin Jackson has only been taken down by like the elite wrestlers in MMA, such as Dan Henderson and Rashad Evans. But Matt Hamill had no answer for him, and yeah, it really wasn't the most exciting fight to watch. We didn't see Jackson let go. He kind of was hesitant. He got the W, and I think the fans, to get excited for him and John Jones, I think they would have wanted a typical Quinn Rampage finish.
Yeah. I guess if he had the chance to motorboat Hamill, he might have finished it. But right now we're arguing in the chat room about Rampage's, I guess, heart, if we want to put a label on it. And Will Brooks, you have a definite opinion on Rampage, so let's hear it.
This douchebag in here saying that Rampage is done. I say he's not done. He's just not a killer anymore like he used to be. But that's okay.
That doesn't make him a douchebag. Come on.
I know. I'm just messing around. Smashing Darling, you're cool. Anyway, I have to agree with you guys. I would not want to see this fight in 5 rounds. I don't think it should be mandatory 5 rounds. There were some non-title fights I would have liked to see in 5 rounds. On special occasions like Couture of Nogueira, I would have loved to see that in 5 rounds. Certain fights, yes, I'd like to see it. If like it's a number 1 contender fight, maybe this should be mandatory. It should be just stopped by a select basis.
I mentioned the Rashad and Phil Davis fight coming up in August and John Jones Rampage, and that's not what they had in mind originally. They originally wanted to do John Jones and Rashad, of course, and that did not come to be. First, John Jones said, oh, my fingers hurt, my hands hurt, whatever, and now that's not going to happen. They substituted Phil Davis in with Rashad in Philadelphia, not exactly the most stimulating pay-per-view main event, and now John Jones Rampage, as we mentioned. So with this whole John Jones-Rashad drama that unfolded, if you don't know what happened, Rashad was in the Greg Jackson camp that John Jones is in, and they didn't want to fight because they were friendly with each other, and Dana White was like, this is bullshit. Guys who are in the same camp should fight each other, but they were holding off on that. Then Rashad feels slighted. Everyone's focusing on John Jones. He's the new golden child. In fact, I think there's actually a lot of backlash on John Jones now, and on the internet I'm reading that people are just, I guess, kind of feeling like Rocky Maivia about this guy, like he's getting shoved down our throats, and there's some backlash there. But they're taking it to extremes in some cases, saying John Jones was ducking Rashad, and as soon as the Phil Davis substitution happened, all of a sudden, yep, I'm okay. I'll fight a month or 2 after that. Any thoughts on what unfolded with these 2 separate fights now, Rod?
I really never try to argue the Zuffa matchmaking, but this so far is the biggest story in MMA as far as 2 elite athletes who generally have a dislike for each other, and them both coming from the same camp. Greg Jackson's camp, nonetheless. Dana White has been very forward about 2 fighters who, or if they're in title contention, making that have the fight. I know he's really been trying to get Koscheck and John Fitch to fight, but they refused. They're friends, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And now you had Rashad Evans getting hurt for the Shogun title shot. John Jones stepping in, and he gets the title, and these 2, they're about to fight. And then it became heated. It became interesting because we really want to see what would happen between these 2, because I honestly think that Rashad Evans has a great shot at beating John Jones.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is something that they really should have capitalized. I think as soon as John Jones said he was able to fight, they should have had Rashad and John Jones whenever, wherever. Because
switch it back.
This would have been the fight, like, over 1 million buys, easily. You really don't know who is really going to win, and there's just so many factors, so many great storylines that it really is a missed opportunity. Hopefully, sometime in 2012, that we could see these 2 mix it up, because I'm really interested to see what would happen between these 2.
Phil Davis's last victory against Little Nog, not the greatest fight I've ever seen. I mean, a win's a win, I guess, but I don't think after that fight anybody was hoping this guy was going to main event a pay-per-view, and I don't think that Phil Davis comes anywhere near being a good substitute. That's like a versus main event to me, practically. I know Rashad's got name power, so it's not exactly Nate Marquardt type level of versus or anything, but I just really don't care for that as a pay-per-view main event. And do you prefer Will Brooks, John Jones, and Rampage over John Jones, Rashad? What's your take on this whole drama?
Remember the last time Rashad Evans had a really big build-up to a fight, was against Rampage,
yep.
and we didn't get to see it when we wanted to. We had to see it like 8 months later, when it didn't really care as much. And
it sucked.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be the same thing with this fight. I mean, it's going to happen 6 months from now, and we're going to be like, well, okay, it would have been cooler if it happened when it was still hot,
mm-hmm.
you know? That'd be like Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan not fighting at WrestleMania 3. They'd fight at SummerSlam. And by that time, the build-up would have been dead, and no one would have cared anymore.
Yeah, strike while the iron's hot, and I don't think the iron is hot on the Ultimate Fighter anymore. Let's touch upon the Ultimate Fighter series that just happened, the 13th season, before we get to the finale, because Brock Lesnar was on this show, and before it happened, of course, he had his autobiography to plug, and Brock Lesnar was like the pay-per-view king before he got another bout of diverticulosis that is going to put him out till next year. I mean, this guy was doing over 1 million buys, I think, for every pay-per-view fight he had outside of the first one against Mir. So this guy is the star, the face, the cover of the magazine, the video game, whatever. You'd think that would translate into TV ratings on cable for Spike, because, I mean, Kimbo did well when he was on the show the other year, but the ratings weren't really that good, and I don't think the season was either. I think that some of the fights were good. I really enjoyed some of the fights, but as an overall story, I lost big interest when Lesnar had to duck out of the fight against Dos Santos. Even before that, the ratings weren't doing that well, and a lot of people are saying that the series is stale, it needs to be freshened up. Dana White constantly mentions that he wants to do an international edition, specifically in the Philippines. I'm sure that ties in with the flyweight 125 division they want to start by the end of the year, but he's also mentioned a huge international tournament edition of the Ultimate Fighter. That's not going to happen just yet because the next season is Michael Bisping and Jason Mayhem Miller, who they just signed. A lot of people, the rumor is, in Spike internally are calling that the last season of Ultimate Fighter on Spike because there's a contract that is running up, a deal that is running up with Spike TV this year, and UFC is negotiating with a lot of different networks, and the rumor, of course, reported by the New York Times, is that they want to buy controlling interest in G4, probably in the long term to turn it over into the UFC network that they've been wanting to create for a while. So who knows what the immediate future is of the Ultimate Fighter beyond this year. But for the time being, your thoughts on Ultimate Fighter in general. Is it really as stale as people have been saying, Rod? Does it need a shake-up somehow?
I think it was just this season because nobody was saying that after the last season, 12, with GSP and Koscheck. That was pretty interesting because GSP is always a draw. Every episode is interesting, and it had great fights. Brock was just mellow. He doesn't have the fight adrenaline that he has that people are so drawn to about. And Junior Dos Santos is a very respectful guy. He's not the one to really talk trash about any opponent, no matter how much they push that factor. However, I think if Frank Mir was the opposing coach, it would have been a whole different story, and we wouldn't be having this discussion. It's not so much the format that's stale, because people still watch The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and that format still hasn't changed. Jeopardy's still on TV. That format still hasn't changed.
You're damn right it's still on TV, and it better be on TV forever because it's the best fucking show ever. But as you were saying...
Yeah, exactly. People want to see conflict. I think just because we started out with season 1 with so many personalities and so many standouts, where a lot of those people are still in the UFC, and that
became big stars.
Yeah, you have so many stars on that show between Koscheck and Diego and Forrest and Stephen Bonner, Nate Quarry, and so on. It's a pretty huge cast, and no season was really followed up to that hype. If this is the last season, I don't think so. I still think it really gives a lot of young kids exposure. It's still giving people exposure to the sport in general and trying to educate them, which I think is the point of it. But I just don't think that they should end it now just if they had a low-rating season. I just think they just need to get some personalities. What better personalities to get than Michael Bisping and Jason Miller?
I thought the whole point of the show was to get Dana White on TV. But it's funny that we compared the new season of Tough Enough that they resurrected with Stone Cold Steve Austin on USA Network for WWE to the Ultimate Fighter, because it surpassed Ultimate Fighter this year. A lot of more people were into the new Tough Enough. That did pretty good ratings. I think that's why they've been doing so many 3-hour Raws lately, because they had a good lead-in. They were doing good in their slot, and I'd be shocked if they didn't bring it back up for another season. That being said, Austin surpassing Lesnar, that's pretty surprising. You think the format needs a shake-up at all, Will Brooks? Do you agree with Rodney? What do you think should be done with Ultimate Fighter?
A little shake-up wouldn't be a bad thing, but they actually do have Mayhem and Bisping. I think that's a great job right there. Those two guys are going to talk a lot of shit, and I'm sorry to use pro wrestling, but they can both get heat really well. A lot of people hate both those guys. I'm all for it. Those are two guys. But in terms of shake-up, I think you can use a shake-up. It's been the same thing for, 13, 14 seasons now? The same format, same everything. It's been a while since I really cared about it. Maybe it's because the coaches don't fight on the finale anymore. They fight on the next pay-per-view, which maybe that hurts it. I don't know.
It's funny because Lesnar was supposed to be the big star this season. I ended up being an even bigger Junior Dos Santos fan. He came across very friendly and personable and just really likable. And I got real behind him after that. And I still say that they should do a women's edition, maybe via Strikeforce. That would be something I'd really love to see myself. But that led into the Ultimate Fighter 13 finale at the Pearl at the Palms in Vegas, June 4th. And it wasn't the main event. The finals of Ultimate Fighter were the main event, but the showdown between the lightweight Clay Guida taking on the last WEC lightweight champion, Anthony Pettis. Big Anthony Pettis fan. I thought he had Fight of the Year last year against Ben Henderson in December, and this is the guy that was supposed to get the winner of Edgar Maynard that got fucked in January with the draw, and unfortunately he's getting lost in the shuffle here because he ended up losing to Clay Guida by unanimous decision. And even though I scored that the same way as the judges, I thought that Clay Guida definitely won that by takedowns. A lot of people were saying the scoring sucks, and we all know there's problems with the judges in scoring in MMA, but they were saying that Anthony Pettis had a lot to show on the ground. He was very active and went for the finish a lot more than Clay Guida did, so some people scored it for Pettis. Let's just see what you think. Rodney.
I could see from a judge's point of view and a fan's point of view how Guida could have won that fight. I think he definitely won that fight, but not by much. He definitely didn't handle Pettis. I thought Pettis still, regardless of the amount of times that he got taken down, he wasn't taken down at ease, and he showed very good wrestling defense. Guida was just relentless in his takedowns, but I think once Pettis was able to have his distance, he was better in striking. He was more active on the ground. Guida, once he got on the ground, I don't think he even went for a lot of submission attempts. He really didn't implement any sort of ground and pound, not to the effect that would really show him as a stand-up fighter in this fight. It was really close. There's some things Pettis needs to work on, but at the end of the day, I still think that Pettis did do a great job and is still among the elite in the lightweight division.
Absolutely, and I agree on that point. Pettis definitely was more active in terms of trying to submit Clay Guida, a lot of submission attempts there. And with that in mind, I wanted to bring up WEC because we're getting pretty much into the last vestiges here with Pettis and Aldo before him of WEC fighters. And so far, in terms of integrating the WEC roster, I've been largely disappointed. Outside of Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, who had that great twister submission over Leonard Garcia, I have not been very blown away or impressed outside of the Zombie. Donald Cerrone's done okay. Pettis, even in the loss, looked good. But so far, yeah, guys like Jose Aldo did not look that great. Aldo, I was not blown away. Mike Brown's been losing a lot. Sad about that. Even Uriah Faber, even though he won in Newark, I'm waiting for these highlight reels to come to life. You see the kicks off the cage by Anthony Pettis, the knees by Jose Aldo. You see all these great finishes by these lighter weight fighters, and it's not really coming to be. I mean, Antonio Buenuelos, that sucked. Dominic Cruz is yet to defend against Uriah Faber here, so that can hopefully make up for it. But Miguel Torres hasn't had a really great fight yet either. That first featherweight bout in the UFC with Leonard Garcia and Namfan, that was a disaster. So what do you think about the WEC fighters so far, Rodney, making big enough splashes?
I still think they're right up there. I think they're like 4-4 or something like that. Something around that range as far as WEC versus UFC fighters. But you have to think these guys are taken out of the element and they're going on to the big stage. You really have to take that into consideration. I mean, WEC, they're used to it. They're at home, smaller crowd, not as much pressure. And now that they've been combined with the UFC. There's so much more pressure as far as their jobs, and now here they are in the UFC where you got the glitz, the glamour, the lights. Octagon's pretty bigger, so I've heard these guys haven't been given easy fights. Miguel Torres, I would definitely agree with you on that, even though he was pretty active on the ground in his last fight against Demetrius Johnson. But
it was definitely better than that fight with Ben Wellis, at least.
Yeah, and Uriah Faber had a really tough fight when he fought in Newark. But, I mean, you really just have to give these guys time. I mean, Anthony Pettis, the kick of the cage wasn't his first fight in WEC. Uriah Faber wasn't lighting up in his first fight. It's just the way it is. You have to give these guys time to really get in the groove and get used to the whole UFC atmosphere. I still think they're really going to make their mark. Like I said, Donald Cerrone has been doing really good, even though I think he could have finished his last opponent. But you got to give these guys time to really adjust, because it is an adjustment going from what WEC was to the big leagues. I mean, LeBron James didn't score 45 points in his first game in the NBA. You got to let these guys season.
I guess so, and maybe I'm just being unfair, but maybe I'm looking at it from a promoter's point of view that first impressions are everything, and I was a big WEC fan, so I want these guys to do well, and I'd love to see those highlight reel submissions or knockouts in their first few fights.
Yeah, we did too, but I mean, you could almost say more for the Pride fighters who came over. They had a lot higher hopes for all the Pride fighters that came to UFC. Look what happened to Crow Cop.
You know what, though? Crow Cop and Rampage's first pay-per-view out in Vegas, I thought they had better first fights, though, at least.
Yeah, and look who they're fighting. They're fighting guys who haven't fought in UFC since.
All right. Let's move on to the main event. The finals of Ultimate Fighters Season 13. Tony Ferguson at welterweight defeating Ramzi Najim, knocking him out first round. Wow, I didn't expect that. Your thoughts, Rodney, on the win by Ferguson, the new Ultimate Fighter?
I was honestly surprised. Ramzi, the whole show, has been dominating people with his wrestling. He almost reminded me of Kurt Pellegrino because he was this goofy guy, but he was a great wrestler and really used it in a great sense MMA-wise. Against Ferguson, he was kind of going to use that same game plan, but Ferguson just caught him and really capitalized on it, and I'm excited what he's going to do in the UFC. Training with the Death Clutch crew, hopefully they bring in some more lighter guys to expand that gym.
You know, Rodney, that the show on Versus coming up on Sunday is going to be the 5th show in a row as far as weekends go that Zuffa's done now.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
The last show that happened on Saturday, because, Strikeforce, Overeem versus Werdum, produced by Zuffa now. Well, really produced by the usual crew on Showtime and everything, but it's under the Zuffa banner. From Dallas, Texas, saw the World Heavyweight Grand Prix continue, and unlike last time, Rodney, which was up in the Izod Center in East Rutherford, I didn't think the heavyweights looked that great that night. Yeah, Chad Griggs got his victory over Valentine, however you pronounce it, Overeem. I loved how the announcers were burying him the whole time. Like, even before he tapped his strikes, they were questioning his heart, and then they're like, yep, look at him, he's a fucking pussy.
They didn't even know he tapped out until the replay.
Oh, I caught it, so I don't know what they were looking at.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Josh Barnett got cleared in Texas. You know, he's got clearance issues all over the place. I wonder why.
I wonder why.
He defeated Brett Rogers in the second round with a head and arm triangle. Josh Barnett, old school MMA, UFC, and pro wrestling. He's still wrestling in Japan for Inoki here and there, but he got the victory over Brett Rogers. Do you think Brett Rogers is just fucking done at this point? I mean, I checked over this guy's record, and yeah, he won his first couple Strikeforce fights, but he hasn't won in a while. And if you notice, he's lost against the bigger names. So even though he was undefeated when he went up against Fedor before he got knocked out in the second round, do you think this Brett Rogers experiment is pretty much over at this point?
I don't think so. I mean, he was, 8-0 when he fought Fedor. I mean, look at the guys he lost to, like Fedor.
Yeah, but look at the guys he beat. None of those sort of guys were on the victory list either.
Yeah, but when he beat Andre Arlovsky, it meant something because Arlovsky was just maybe coming off that Fedor loss, so he wasn't on that string of knockout losses. I still think he's good in the ground. Against Overeem, he got completely dominated against the Strikeforce heavyweight champion, who's heavily favored to win the tournament. And he lost to Josh Barnett, who's great on the ground, was really, really heavy on the hips. But Rogers tried everything, screwing his hips up, putting his feet on the cage. I mean, he really did what he can to try to get out. And Josh Barnett, he's an elite fighter. So the losses he has are against elite fighters. I still think that he could be in the middle of the heavyweight division. He's still a pretty exciting fighter to watch. I think there's a lot of life left in him still.
I don't think Josh Barnett Brett Rogers is done. He's still got some fight into him. He may not be a champion. He can still make a living being a good fighter, still knock guys out. He needs to work on his all-around game more, yeah, but I still think he's had something to deliver to the sport. When this whole thing is over, will he get signed by UFC? We'll see, but you never know.
Maybe he'll end up in Titan or Bellator, one of those things. Maybe I'm just being too hard on Brett Rogers like Dana White was on Roy Nelson. But, hey, Roy Nelson didn't get finished by those guys. Anyway, main event, heavyweight champion Alistair Overeem, who I think is one of the best heavyweight strikers in MMA. Obviously, he won the K1 Grand Prix back in December. He's got 3 titles at once, none of which were on the line. Well, if you count K1 tournament win as a title. Taking on Fabricio Werdum. Werdum coming off his submission victory over Fedor last year, his first fight since then. Non-title fight, but if Overeem made it to the finals, I think it should be a title fight anyway, because it was supposed to be 5 rounds in the first place. But anyway, Overeem and Werdum, clash of styles. A lot of people were shitting on the main event because really wasn't that great. Seems like Verdum's strategy is to take a hit to give a hit, if you count going on the ground as a hit, because it's like he'll take a punch or a knee and tries bringing Overeem down into his guard, but Overeem ain't playing that fucking game. You can see the story of this fight just playing out, that stand up, no, come down here. It really was a clash of styles, and people were booing that, didn't really care for that. And you could really see Werdum sucking wind in the second round, real tired getting up. But Overeem gets the unanimous decision, clean sweep. Your thoughts on the main event, Rodney?
Thank God this was not a 5-round title fight, because that would have been brutal. And it's really just disappointing because I think the last 5 or 6 shows, Strikeforce has been putting on really, really great shows.
Yeah, they have, and I was going to mention that. The streak's over.
Yeah. Even as far back as the Fedor Rogers event, all the events have been very exciting finishes, and even their challengers cards have been very good, but they've been delivering on a consistent basis up until Saturday, which was probably one of the most hyped shows out of all of them. Overeem, I mean, people still say he's like one of the best heavyweight strikers. I still give that title to Junior Dos Santos. The Overeem I saw on Saturday, if that Overeem shows up against Bigfoot Silva, he's not making it to the finals. I know people are, he's not. I'm sorry. The Silva looked way too good against Fedor. It wasn't like Werdum victory over Fedor where he just pretty much took punishment until he got Fedor in a triangle choke that anyone else would have seen a mile away, and Fedor, I guess, just thought that he would overcome it. Silva would handle Overeem if the same Overeem showed up. I just think he just didn't look aggressive. He didn't look like he wanted to finish the fight. I think he just took way too many strikes. I mean, he said that he wanted to finish this fight, but he questioned Werdum. Werdum didn't want to fight. I mean, most of the 3 rounds, Werdum was standing, so I don't know what Overeem was waiting for. I think he had plenty of chances to really implement his style. I feel like we didn't see the demolition man that everyone thought they were going to see.
Fair point. Will Brooks?
I got to give up to the Dutchman on this one, Alistair Overeem. He's from the Netherlands, my home country, again, kicking ass. I love him. I'm a big homer for all people who are Dutch. I don't care. But he's great. I love to see him fight Josh Barnett, kick his ass, and then come to the UFC and fight Cain Velasquez. I'd love to see that fight. It would be cool as hell, and it would be a great way to implement the titles. Be like UFC, whatever, 100, whatever, clash the champions.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because even before the fight, Overeem and Werdum were both saying that we want to win the tournament to get a UFC title shot. That was Overeem's big adamant thing, that I want to win the tournament and get a UFC title shot. Which brings to mind a match that was just signed, GSP against Nick Diaz. I think we talked about it last time, but GSP and Nick Diaz, both welterweight champions in their respective organizations, both owned by Zuffa. And it was cleared up recently what's going to happen. Nick Diaz is going to vacate the Strikeforce welterweight title, and then fight GSP. Part of his new deal is he could fight in either UFC or Strikeforce. He can go back and forth. It's not exclusive for one or the other. And I think this is a bad idea. I don't like the idea of Nick Diaz giving up the title and then them crowning a new champion. I do like the idea of unifying the titles, having a roaming champion. Alistair Overeem or whoever is the heavyweight champion after this, I think should be in there, in the mix, with the guys like Junior Dos Santos and Velasquez. And I think just having so many champions across the board is not the way to go. Dana White's always said that one of the downfalls of boxing is all the title situations are too confusing. No one knows what the fuck that is. And I also think if they're going to leave Spike TV, everyone's saying that because Viacom owns Spike TV as well as MTV, they're just going to move Bellator over from MTV2 or whatever the fuck they're on to Spike TV. If that's the case, what's Bellator known for? Tournaments. That's how they format their events and their fighting structure. I think it'd be a great idea if you have all the titles unified, roaming champions across either one, UFC or Strikeforce, and if need be, because they're doing it right now with the World Grand Prix, make Strikeforce the tournament promotion. That's just my idea. What do you think about the idea of these titles, Rod, and specifically this Nick Diaz GSP situation?
I would have rather promoted as a champion versus champion, almost what they did with GSP and Shields, promoting him as former champion, because he never lost the Strikeforce middleweight champion,
right.
And he beat the middleweight champion, and now he's facing their welterweight champion. As far as the actual fight goes, it'll be interesting just to see the fight because Nick Diaz has been having exciting fights since he's been in Strikeforce, but I really think he has no chance at beating GSP. I don't think Diaz could beat Koscheck. I don't think he could beat Fitch. I don't think he could beat BJ Penn. I don't think he could beat Thiago Alves. I honestly don't think he could beat Matt Hughes.
Wow.
That's not taken away from the opponents. These guys are just on a completely different level, and the guys that he's beaten his face would lose to the top 5 guys in the welterweight division. Interesting fight, though. If he comes and does his trash talking or whatever, I think he's able to get into GSP's head. I think it's a different trash talking than what Koscheck does. What Koscheck does is kind of like cocky, and he just wants to like mess with GSP. With Diaz, he has that thug attitude, and he can really get in GSP's face, and like he talks trash during his fights. I mean, this guy doesn't stop. Since Strikeforce, he has a big following, and if GSP Anderson Silva can't happen, I think this was the next fight that people are wanting. So let's see what happens, but don't be surprised if you see GSP with his hand raised.
Well, this past Saturday's event, the Overeem Werdum event, got, I think, the second highest rating in Strikeforce history on Showtime, so it looks like the Zuffa promotion marketing it is helping out a little bit at least. So, Will Brooks, before we wrap up MMA, your thoughts on the whole GSP Diaz title situation and as it relates to UFC Strikeforce titles?
Oh, Rodney. I don't know how you can think that Matt Hughes now could beat Nick Diaz right now.
He would finish Nick Diaz. He would finish Nick Diaz.
You are out of your damn mind, man.
No way.
Forget about your back. Go get a CAT scan. But no, Nick Diaz, I really think Nick Diaz is a lot better than people gave him credit for. And I really believe he's probably the second best in that weight class. So him fighting GSP is gold to me. It's number 1 versus number 2. And I'm dying to see the
second best across all the boards. Like, across all promotions, you think he's second best?
In that weight class, yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Ben Askren would wipe the floor with Nick Diaz.
I'm not knocking Ben Askren. I'm just saying this is what I feel at the moment, okay? And I'm thinking I can't wait to see his fight. I think he's going to give him a better fight than people think he will, but I still think GSP is going to win. I mean, he's GSP. I mean, who's going to beat this guy? Nobody. It's like Anderson Silva. I don't expect anybody to really beat Anderson Silva. They can give him a good fight, but no one's going to beat him. same thing with GSP. No one's going to beat him. All you can do is hope to give a good kick-ass fight and hopefully find a weakness. So when you come on for the second fight, you got a chance. But I don't think anyone does, and that's just too bad because I think it's going to be a good fight anyway.
Well, I think Ben Askren thinks he'll end up in UFC sooner rather than later, so maybe we'll find that out someday. But that's going to wrap it up for MMA. Next on the agenda, polls, news, and calls. I see people are trying to call in. I have not forgotten about you. We will get to you. But first, want to read the results of some of the latest polls we had on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Should UFC unify the Strikeforce titles with their own? 27% said no, all out. 33% said yes, as in right now. And 40%, the majority, said yes, but in a few years. I guess that's going to happen inevitably anyway with the Showtime contracts running out, but we'll see. Also, we had who should be main eventing in WWE the most. Moving on to pro wrestling. Man, this is real indicative of his standing in fans' eyes, but the last two spots tied at 1% were Mark Henry and Hornswoggle. That's pretty sad when you get the same amount of votes as Hornswoggle. 7% voted for Evan Bourne. Unlike WWE, I'm not messing up the voting here. 9% went to Kofi Kingston. 10% went to Sheamus. Sorry, Will Brooks. 14% went to Jack Swagger. 18% went to R-Truth, who came in second place. Probably would have been my vote. But I said second place because 40% of you said Christian should be main eventing the most. And I'm sure you're disappointed after numerous rematches with Randy Orton. He's still not the champion, but we'll talk about that pay-per-view Capital Punishment a little later on. First, the news. New Japan presented Dominion 618 this past Saturday, live on WPW pay-per-view from Japan's Osaka Prefectural Gymnasium. DDT's Kota Ibushi defeated Prince Devitt for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title after just recently winning New Japan's Best of the Super Juniors tournament. I guess he really is the best of the Super Juniors. And IWGP Tag Team Champions Bad Intentions, Carl Anderson and Giant Bernard, who you would remember as Prince Albert, beat Pro Wrestling Noah's GHC Tag Team Champions Yoshihiro the Hotness Takayama and Takuma Sanyo. Bernard used a Bernard driver on Sanyo to become the first tag team to win both sets of tag titles. Setting records over in Japan is A-Train. On Saturday, Triple A's Triple Mania took place at Mexico City's Palacio de los Deportes. On a card stacked with TNA wrestlers, Jeff Jarrett won the Mega Heavyweight title from Zorro after using foreign objects and a guitar shot to set up the pinfall. After the DEA placed an emergency ban of 1 year on synthetic marijuana, on Tuesday, March 1st, WWE has added it to their list of drugs performers are tested for, carrying the same $2,500 fine as a standard marijuana violation, which means fake fighters can't use fake weed. Dave Bautista opened his Gracie Fighter Jiu-Jitsu gym this past Saturday on the Northdale Mabry Highway in Tampa, Florida. Bautista said in MMA he's found peace, as opposed to Molina back in WWE, which is when he found a peace. The legendary Kenta Kobashi returns to the ring at Pro Wrestling Noah's Great Voyage 2011 in Osaka, Saturday, July 23rd from Japan's Osaka Prefectural Gymnasium. No word on exactly what improvements Cyberdyne Systems has made to Kobashi, and those are just some of the news stories from WrestlingRoundtable.com. Much more at WrestlingRoundtable.com, including guest columns. I want to mention two of them. One from Graham up in Canada, who wrote a piece on the Macho Man Randy Savage, and one from Jamal Reynolds out in California on various styles of martial arts. It was a good read, and good if you're getting to mixed martial arts. The term is graduating, people. That's an actual term in UFC internally when wrestling fans get turned on to MMA. So hope we can be part of your graduation in learning more about mixed martial arts. And before we go on to the pro wrestling portion, let's go to some calls. 602 area code, name and location, please.
This is Bruce in Phoenix, Arizona. SmackDown will be here next Tuesday. I have a couple of questions. One, I read somewhere that they're possibly thinking about merging the titles together. Do you think that CM Punk will possibly beat John Cena at the next pay-per-view and leave with the title and just have one title in the WWE?
I think that would be a great idea. I think that would be Hey, everyone, shut the fuck up. I'm the host.
Oh, hi. Hey, Corey. How you doing, Corey?
Anyway, I think that would be a great idea. No one really knows what the situation with Punk is. Some people think that maybe he really is actually leaving and they're doing this as a goodbye. And I think they respect him and value him enough as a performer to do something big like this with him on his way out. But I'm pretty sure that it's just something more along the lines of, hey, I did this in ROH, let's do it here. And it ends up that he's actually going to be staying around at least for a little while. But even if he does leave and they use that as some sort of way to get rid of a title, I think it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Unifications are something that's definitely needed, I think. As I just mentioned with UFC and Strikeforce having a roaming champion, WWE did that back in 2002 with the not only women's title, actually, undisputed title, and I thought it worked better.
I think so, too.
If he signs a contract to another specific company over the belt that is currently being held by John Cena, I will laugh myself silly, to be quite honest.
The only way Punk is getting out of their title is if the match happens to take place in Montreal and they do a reverse Montreal screw job. That's the only way it's happening.
Well, it's Money in the Bank, folks. You got to remember that. So I definitely see CM Punk winning it. I'm sure a Money in the Bank winner is going to ruin CM Punk's plan. So it's definitely
Didn't the Dudley Boys do this back in ECW before they went to WWE? Like the last day they won the titles and then lost them the same night?
Yes,
it wasn't the same night, but it was essentially the same idea.
No, yeah, it was the same night. Tommy Dreamer and Raven did beat them at TNN the last night there.
Yeah, but they had the belts going into that fight at the Elks Lodge in New York because they hyped it over the weekend.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right, yes.
But it's the same idea, and it's been done many times.
It worked then. And it worked then. It can work now. It's been 10 years. You can rehash them after 10 years.
I'm not saying it's bad to rehash it. I think it's a good idea. Anything else on your mind?
Yeah, I was wondering, have you seen the Ultimate Warrior's, like, pretty much shoot interview on Hulk Hogan and kind of personal opinions about that?
Not only have I seen it, I just read the results of the polls we had on WrestlingRoundtable.com. There are 2 new polls on WrestlingRoundtable.com, one of which is, what else does Ultimate Warrior have as far as dirty laundry relating to Hulk Hogan goes? There's some possibilities for you up there. And that's not the only poll we have as well. But I listened to it this weekend, and his whole thing was, I'm going to expose you, Terry. I've got dirty laundry on you, and you did cocaine, and you had an open marriage with Linda, and I wouldn't fuck her, and you had sex with a girl your daughter's age. And I'm thinking, so far, if this is supposed to be damning,
how surprised are you?
It's not affecting me because, open marriage, fucking girl his daughter's age. Hogan sounds like the fucking man at this point. I don't think much of it because of all the things that people hate on Ultimate Warrior for, being a bad worker, that's definitely not mine. I thought this guy had a lot of great matches with, guys who were big names, but you know what? It takes 2 to tango, and even if he was blown up or whatever the fuck, he held up his end of the bargain in 2 of my favorite matches of all time from when I was younger, WrestleMania 6 against Hogan, WrestleMania 7 against Savage, all-time classics, and he was a big part of that. So I can't take away from anything relating to him in that respect. He should definitely be in the Hall of Fame. That being said, I think as a person, he's generally a piece of shit. And I'm not even saying for holding up Vince for money or any of that stuff. The story that always bothered me was that Owen and Bulldog pulled a prank on him once where this is in 96, let a bunch of mice they got from a pet store into the room that he was going to be changing it or whatever, and when they came back, they saw that he had stomped all of them to death. I thought that's just fucking disgusting, and on top of the queering doesn't make the world work shit, the guy just comes off like a real scumbag to me. Not that Hogan is the most truthful person in the world either, but I just think it sounds largely like sour grapes, and it's just ridiculous to think that 21 years after WrestleMania 6, he's still talking about Hulk Hogan.
Well, to be fair, I've emailed back and forth with Warrior on a couple of occasions, and he has...
Sure you have.
Actually, he's been pretty polite to me, so... I don't have a bad word to say about the Warrior.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to move on, Bruce, but thanks for calling in. Not WWE, but first up in sequential order, TNA Slammiversary, which happened in the Impact Wrestling Zone on June 12th. Going down the card, the opener was kind of remind me of the Gangstonators when they put Cronus and New Jack together after their partners disappeared, but it was James Storm, who was the tag champion in Beer Money, with Robert Roode hurt, Alex Shelley, Chris Sabins hurt, so Shelley teamed up with James Storm, taking on the British Invasion of Douglas Williams and Magnus. How was the opener, Corey?
Well, the first part of the match was really strong. I think that James definitely looked his best here. James Storm and Alex Shelley worked surprisingly well together. The middle part of the match, though, got kind of slow. I'm glad that James Storm and Alex Shelley won, but the middle part of the match definitely could be chucked out.
I had a hard time caring about the match because it was pretty obvious the British Invasion wasn't winning it. This is obviously a storyline set up for this because Rude's out of the ring.
Why isn't it obvious then? Because both guys' partners are hurt. Why bother keeping it on those two?
TV, the team is not. There's a difference. One's on TV and the other one's not. Then there's a difference between that. They still work well together. I mean, these guys are TNA originals, so they are going to work so well together, and they've fought many matches before. I still thought it was a good match. The finisher of the match was still good. I'm really looking forward to the advancement of that storyline.
Advancement is what people are saying Matt Morgan is not doing, because this guy was main eventing just recently against Jeff Hardy. Now he's against Scott Steiner, and Steiner, same deal. They were like, well, when they didn't get Nash and Booker T back in January to do this stupid main event Mafia thing over again, they really had no idea what to do with Scott Steiner. So what do you think of Matt Morgan beating Big Papa Pump, Corey?
This match should never have been booked. It was just sloppy, all over the place, slow, mismanaged. Nobody looked good in this match, which is shocking. You would think that with this long-standing off-again, on-again feud, that this would be an exciting match, but it just was a flop. This was a complete dud.
Agree, Will Valdez?
Yeah, I do. Again, another match where I had a really hard time trying to really get myself emotionally involved and to say I cared about these two guys, but Morgan's been on a big downfall. I mean, Steiner, yeah, he's in there for the wrong reasons. There's talent to cut. Steiner is one of them because he doesn't bring anything to that. He doesn't bring anything anymore. Morgan still has an opportunity. The right guy went over and won. But now what? What's the advancement? I don't know.
Well, if he had lost, it wouldn't have helped, that's for sure. But the X Division champion Abyss defeated Kaz, or Kazarian, whatever you want to call him, and Brian Kendrick in a three-way. One of these things is not like the other. Abyss standing out above the smaller guys. Your thoughts on his title defense, Corey?
Okay in some spots, and then just obvious in other spots. This was another dud match. This was mismanaged, misbooked. There were some areas where it looked like Kendrick and Kazarian were going to do really well, but ultimately they both just looked squashed up against Abyss, and I really didn't like the storyline leading into this match. This is a complete burial.
Well, the storyline was 1 week, so how could you like it? The whole point is to build up for the next pay-per-view. If it's just trying to fade away the X Division, which I get the storyline, I thought it was a good match. I like Abyss in this environment. It's something different for him to face all these X Division guys, so I thought the match was actually really good. I'm a huge fan of this, and Brian Kendrick's been really stepping up. So as it always Kaz. He's always been a great performer. I thought it was pretty good, actually. I enjoyed it, because the next pay-per-view is really where this is going to finally come over.
People on our message board were saying that they hate that whenever TNA does try pushing new people, people shit on it. And that was in reference to people like Matt Morgan and Crimson, who's coming up next. Crimson beating Samoa Joe, keeping his undefeated streak alive. And it seems like they're really behind Crimson. Are you, Corey?
Yeah, I liked this match. With Crimson, he's holding back. I saw him wrestle as Tommy Mercer in AIW, and I can tell you for a fact that this guy's got a lot of potential behind him, and it's really all about how they book him from here on out. This was actually a fun match to watch, and one of the stronger matches on the pay-per-view. I know some people don't like it, but I personally enjoyed myself quite a bit, and I liked that little teaser at the end where they teased maybe Joe and Crimson will have another exhibition. So that was nice.
I'm not used to you saying so much nice stuff in a row. Will Vafides.
Damn, and you're about to hear this too. Actually, I agree with her. That doesn't happen often, so please, folks, download this one on the iTunes, because this one's worth having. Yeah, I liked it. I thought the match was really good. They're pushing Crimson like crazy. He's in that tournament for Bountiful as well, which he's undefeated, so don't be shocked if he's in the main event. I would not be shocked. If they're going to continue this undefeated storyline, who better than to put him in the ring with Joe, and Joe giving him the rub? I love the storyline. They had the little bar fight that I thought was good. Joe's taking it very personally about the street thing. I think it's a good storyline. I like it. I like to see these two more.
Patrick G. in our chat room right now, who is on our message board, also disagrees with both of you. He says, Crimson is a giant dud. Super fail. LOL.
Here's my problem, then. You don't like anybody that no one pushes that's new. How can you possibly say you want new stars and new wrestlers, but you can't get behind someone that's new, who's fresh and who's young? I don't get that. So those people who are saying that, you need to wake the fuck up. Seriously, because start liking some wrestlers, or else there's going to be no wrestling business. So why don't you just get behind it, watch it?
Well, let me interject there, Will, because you've said on the show before things like that, like just enjoy it and stuff, and I can't agree with that because, I mean, if you don't like something, you don't like something. It's not like just bend over and take it. So I don't agree with that. But to your point, I do find it funny that the people who are ripping on Crimson and Matt Morgan and those sort of guys, although Bill Treadway, who writes for our site as well, has been a big supporter of Matt Morgan and says that he's improved a lot, those are the same people who say, why don't they push AJ Styles and Chris Daniels and guys like that? AJ Styles and Chris Daniels have been there on and off with Chris Daniels' case, but AJ has been there for 9 years. These guys have been there a long time, and I'm not saying they're not good. Obviously, they're good. But I always felt, and this is years ago already, that the window of opportunity for these guys has been opening and closing for years, and they've never gone all the way with them. I mean, like, how many times did Chris Daniels come back to the company and win the X Division title? It's the same fucking thing. And Samoa Joe, at this point, has been there 5 years or so. It's absurd. These guys have been there a while, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't main event or are in the future or whatever, but just put things in perspective, people. It's like when Jim Ross, as I said on the show before, says, Randy Orton's got a lot of unfulfilled potential. The guy's been on TV 9 fucking years. I think we've seen all we're going to see from him.
This is a marketing and this is a business. As great as a wrestler AJ Styles is, right now he's not marketable. And that's a shame because he is talented. They're giving a guy like Crimson the rub because if AJ Styles and Samoa Joe are not doing it, well, let's see what this kid does. And this kid is getting over. People are supporting and getting behind him. He's got the look. He's got a better look than AJ Styles. He's got a better look than Samoa Joe or Crystal Daniels. So they're going to push him. They're going to give him a look, and he's not a bad wrestler at all. He's doing great in the ring. So let's give it a shot, see what they do. Because AJ Styles apparently is not doing it.
Those guys could have done it, and they should have done it. But at this point, I don't know if it's going to happen. But moving on, the Knockouts champion Mickie James defeated Angelina Love. A lot of people commenting on Angelina Love's new body look, I guess. They think she should eat a sandwich, I guess. But Caligula Ravishing in our chat room just cracked me up. He said she reminds me of a pirate hooker, which sounds great. But your thoughts on the women's match, Corey?
Oh, this was awful. This one was even more awful than the Matt Morgan-Scott Steiner match. And I'm really shocked. Usually, Mickie James is one of the best female wrestlers on this roster, but she just didn't show it. There were a lot of botched moves. The finish to the match was just ugly as all hell. She actually managed to ruin a bulldog. And it was just awful. The beatdown afterwards, where Winter and Angelina just miraculously pop up and start choking her, made very little sense. I really just did not like this match at all. This should have been rebooked.
On Slammiversary was going so well for you up until now. Will Vafides.
Yeah, this match sucked. It was bad. It was a botched finish at the end. It's surprising for Mickie, who is a really good trained wrestler, and Angelina definitely was a huge name back in the day. So not good for the Knockouts. The Knockouts aren't what they used to be anymore, and it's pretty much starting to show.
I'm actually going to bring on Midge for this next match. Brett Ciminello. Hello, Midge.
What's up, guys?
I'm bringing you on because you're in our chat room right now, and you talked about Bully Ray being one of the only reasons to watch TNA, along with Velvet Sky, of course, which is the reason why I watch. But Bully Ray took on AJ Styles, who we were just talking about, in a last man standing match. Before I get other panelists' thought on the match, I know you're an old school ECW fan, Brett, but why is Bully Ray one of the reasons to watch TNA?
He has become their top heel. He is interesting. He's believable. He broke out of his Dudley Boys tag team isolation, which Devon hasn't been able to do, and he's broke off on his own. We saw before with the Raw brand split how Bubba Ray Dudley was a mid-card wrestler for life, but now in TNA, he's taken his big fish in a small pond and made himself into a huge heel. And I love watching him with his all-of-a-sudden sick New York accent, his bully chain. He's just a big jerk-off, and it's great.
You know what I like about it? With all this anti-bullying stuff going on, not only is it great to capitalize off of that sort of idea and turn it into a gimmick, sounds like something Vince Russo would do, but it's a good idea. And of all the people to give it to, this guy has that reputation of being a real asshole historically, even before WWE, or especially before WWE. He's the perfect fit for it.
Yeah, he really is. The funniest part about it is being in Jersey and going by short bars, he's always down there. And the first time I met him, I was a little intimidated. Couldn't have been nicer.
Well, let's see how the match went. Bully Ray beating AJ Styles in a last man standing. Like I said, Coriander 8.
A lot of this match was a lot of fun to watch, actually. Some parts were a little bit scary. Some parts were pretty good. The way the match was finished, though, that's probably going to be talked about quite a bit on the message board, even up through the next pay-per-view. The finish came when AJ climbs up the truss, does this sick elbow drop onto Bully Ray through the table, and we're all thinking that's it. Bully Ray is dead, and AJ is the winner. AJ stumbles up, and Bully Ray kicks AJ into a breakaway wall, and somehow Bully Ray is the winner. That was sort of an odd ending. I think they could have just stopped right at the elbow drop.
This is my favorite match of the whole show. This storyline's been going on for a while. This is one of the ones I was looking forward to on the card. They delivered it, and I thought, the elbow drop to the table looked like it was going to be the finish. And so a nice little swerve, and the right guy won. Bully Ray comes out and wins. And he's the right guy to win this match because AJ, it doesn't hurt AJ if he loses this match. He can get his comeback at another time. But Bully Ray needs it to be this match solidifies how his character really is. And the way that he has been on TV lately, he has been one of the most watchable characters. And he does get the true heat because that's pretty much how he is. He's a bully. That's exactly how he is. He lost a lot of weight, too. I think it's pretty noticeable. He's lost a lot of weight. And he's really into this character. This little spark under him to get going. And, I couldn't be happier for him. I think it's great. So I think it was a good job, a good match. My favorite one. Leading into the main event, it was not the title match that went last. That went before. It was Mr. Anderson defeating Sting to reclaim the TNA title. TNA, yet again, putting the title on the next WWE guy, and I think it's very telling that these guys did not go on last. What do you think, Corey?
The opener for the match was really great. I loved Sting beating Ken Anderson through the aisles. That was really great. That was like Sting from his heyday, Sting in the mid-90s. And then they get to the ring, and I don't know what happened after that, but it just seems like they both lost steam. The match started to get really slow. Eric Bischoff came out for seemingly no reason, tried to count at the same time as the referee. The referee watches Ken Anderson low blow Sting, and Ken becomes the winner. Now, I'm happy that Ken Anderson is the new champion, because I was kind of rooting for him.
I hope you're alone on that.
But this was sort of an odd ending. It was an odd match after they got back to the ring. It was like, I'm not quite sure how to explain it. It's like they started strong and then just went to hell. I don't know what the hell they were thinking.
Maybe Will knows.
Yeah, I like the fight through the crowd. It did get a little slow. I actually loved the finish. Sting is obviously moving on with Hogan and Bischoff. And I love I never saw that before where someone came out and actually hit the ring and then Sting thought he got the 3 count. Obviously, he didn't because Bischoff counted one of them. I don't remember seeing that before, so I thought that was a very creative finish. Ken needs, I call it a prop. He needs this prop to get him over because he's got some pretty big matches coming up. Now, at first, when he was in the Federation, I was really, really into it, and now I've kind of lost a little bit on him, but I did love his little Sting gimmick that he was doing the last few months because he looked exactly like him. He's been coming out as Sting in the old school Sting gear, and he actually looks exactly like him because of the blonde hair, the paint size of him. The build-up of the whole thing was good, and I think the right person won it because Sting was getting a little stale with that belt. We'll see what happens. I don't know who to put the belt on right now. That's like the worst part, though. I don't know who else to give the belt. It's either you give it to Bully Ray right now because he's the only person actually getting some real heat, or Jeff Jarrett or Angle. I don't know who else to give it to.
Let's give it to Brian Kendrick, see what happens.
I'm sure there's lots of names that people might be writing about on our message board, which you can join at WrestlingRoundtable.com. Sign up and share your thoughts, please. But wherever you're listening to us, comment, rate, share, and subscribe, whether it's YouTube, iTunes, and we also have multiple Facebook pages, a fan page and a group page. So keep the chat going, and let's hear who you think should be the TNA champion. But, like I said, the title match did not finish the night. I think that says a lot because they could not touch Jeff Jarrett and Kurt Angle's #1 contenders match. Maybe that should have just been for the fucking title then, if that's the case. But I'm hoping what will be the last in their long series of matches, but people were saying it was the best one they ever had. We've talked about the great chemistry that Kurt Angle and Jeff Jarrett have on the show before. How did this match stand up to their other matches, Corey?
This match was a lot like their other matches. I'm glad Kurt Angle won, but this was not a very good match. This was not entirely strong. And with them having the parking lot brawl the following Thursday on Impact, it just killed all hope behind this being the final battle, which is a cute title that they took from Ring of Honor, don't you think?
Oh, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so. I thought it was a good match. I liked the drama in the match. Kurt Angle losing his gold medal was obviously not going to happen. And Kurt needed this win because he's been getting his ass kicked the entire time. It was good to see the real finish. There was no interference. There was no anything big happening in this one. Because every match they've had has always been somewhat of a weird ending. I thought this match was the right match to end the show because this is going to end the feud. And it is ending the feud.
Well, maybe Angle will go on to win the title and take it to the Olympics with him. Ha 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 ha.
Isn't this funny? Kurt Angle has lost his wife, lost his house, lost his kids, lost his car, lost his furniture, but those little gold medals? Nah, he'll kill a person for those.
That's something you can't take away. That gold medal means more to him than anything else he has, just because that's a lot of hard work.
He won them with his broken freaking neck.
That's why he truly probably cares more about those and a lot of other things he has in his life, I'm sure.
Well, good for him. I guess he should if he worked that hard for it. But if he does end up going for the Olympics again, that would be one less star for TNA. We've seen Tommy Dreamer leave. We've seen them release Desmond Wolfe, who really wasn't on TV much anyway. And Mick Foley just is on his way out as well. Seen some indie names come in like Austin Aries and Azrael. Where did that come from? I mean, cool for him. I'm glad for him. But seems like some sort of subtle transitions going on in TNA. You can talk about that on our message board. We're going to move on to WWE's latest pay-per-view, Capital Punishment, in a minute, but I'm going to try these calls again. Amato, San Antonio, what's up?
Hey, guys. Kurt Angle just recently did an interview saying that he was going to be the one to end Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania 22 and that he never had that 5-star match like he ended up having with Shawn Michaels. Right. And I just want to know about your thoughts. Another thing was I did catch on YouTube the second part of the Invasion, the booking the Invasion, and I was wondering if maybe you might want to do a show on just the screw job and how it affected the business, and I know you talked about it before, but just a general aspect of the screw job and how you would have booked it, or if you were Vince McMahon, how you would have did your whole Bret Hart Angle transition out of the company.
Wow. Well, as far as that goes, it's funny because when I'm updating the archives here and all the old shows are available now on Blog Talk Radio and iTunes, the season finale for our first season, we did the time machine topic. What if? What if Hulk Hogan had never left Vern Gagne's AWA, things like that. And I had originally the Montreal Screwjob on the list. We ran out of time, never able to get to it, but someone wrote recently, it might have been you, Amato, actually, that we should do a whole show on the Montreal Screwjob, and I think we just might. I don't know when in the future, but that's something we haven't really explored very much, and I'd like to revisit that. I got a lot of opinions on that, especially, I guess, in light of Bret Hart selling out, coming back. But as far as Kurt Angle's match with The Undertaker, what Amato was referring to, if you don't know, is that Kurt Angle said in an interview recently that the match he had with Undertaker back at No Way Out, I think 2005, for the title was originally going to be at WrestleMania, so Undertaker can have his big 5-star match at WrestleMania. Because, if you look back at his WrestleMania streak, he hasn't had a lot of great matches before Shawn Michaels. Yeah, the Triple H one, but before that with Giant Gonzalez, King Kong Bundy, things like that. Some matches that were either okay or not that great or whatever, and he wanted that classic of all time, and supposedly he handpicked Kurt Angle for that and said he wanted Angle to end the streak, and WWE thought better of it, as they should have, and the streak is now the big storyline that it is. But the match that they had at No Way Out, Angle says, was originally going to be at WrestleMania and he was going to win. Now, I always thought Undertaker and Angle had good matches, and that one, unfortunately, I thought was a little overrated. And again, when I say the word overrated, it just means not as good as it's perceived. Doesn't mean it's bad. I thought it was good, but not the 5-star classic that people were making it out to be. I'm sure you're aware of this story, Corey. Story, Corey? Both didn't know it. So, any thoughts on the Kurt Angle-Undertaker match from several years ago?
Well, it was a good match for what it was. I don't know about Angle's story on that one, but it's been a long time. I'm not sure what I can say at this point. So.
All right, say nothing. Let's move on. So WWE's Capital Punishment pay-per-view from Sunday at the Verizon Center. Interesting pay-per-view. People really shitting on it a lot, I think, but there were some bright spots, I guess, if you like mid-card titles, because they were kind of featured here. The U.S. title changing hands in Washington, D.C. as Dolph Ziggler defeated Kofi Kingston.
This match could have been better. This is a match that they've already had tons and tons of times, but with the IC belt. So really this was just a rehash of one of their earlier contests. There was not really anything too special about this. I'm glad that they put over Dolph Ziggler's finisher, but this was not one of their best matches. This could have been skipped.
They had a good match. The best part about the match was the ending, where you really don't feel like Dolph Ziggler's actually going to do something at the end, but then Kofi Kingston actually does pass out to the old sleeper hold. They're building up Dolph Ziggler. He's going to go somewhere. He's going to go somewhere quickly.
All right. We're going to go on to Alex Riley and The Miz. People comparing Alex Riley's recent turn on The Miz to when Virgil turned on Ted DiBiase back in 1991 at the Rumble when he turned face after years of abuse and being the bodyguard. You know what, though? The difference is that Virgil got it done with one move, hitting DiBiase with the belt, and it was very well done. And I'm not saying Alex Riley and Miz wasn't, but he just beat the shit out of the Miz. People were really into it. It was similar, but not. So I thought it was a good face turn, and people were really into Alex Riley. Maybe it's more Miz's heat than necessarily being into him, but let's see what you thought of Alex Riley getting his over the Miz.
The problem I had with it, I thought the match was good, and Riley, he had a great reaction. I love his music, too.
Oh, the best music.
I like the way he won. Again, Miz is technically stronger than Riley, in my opinion, and the fact that he beat him with like a DDT kind of shocked me that he won that way. I was kind of expecting like a roll-up or something like that, because that's how I would expect a surprise win. I thought it was great for him, and he got a good reaction, so it was good. I still think that he should have won more of a roll-up kind of way, somewhere a surprise roll-up or something like that.
I disagree completely. Alex, they're doing great with Alex Riley, and the person that you can give 98% of the credit to is The Miz. He's doing a great job as a heel and abusing Alex Riley for all these months, and he's getting exactly what he deserves. How many people want to just turn around and bitch slap people that are over them and their boy? The Miz is doing a great job of putting Alex Riley over. Along with his music and the way they're pushing him, you're getting a really good reaction from everybody. I just hope that they don't put a stop to it next week and put him into Evan Bourne land.
Well, Miz was main eventing WrestleMania, and now he's losing to his second on a B pay-per-view, and Alberto Del Rio's another guy that seemed like he was getting a big push, and I don't know, I guess they might be doing him and Cena at SummerSlam, so he might have something left, but I don't think he even wrestled on the last pay-per-view, was just in a skit, and now he's saddled with the Big Show, but the ref did stop the match due to Big Show's leg, so at least ADR won.
This was all about just getting Alberto Del Rio over at a cheap win. The show came out, he got attacked by Mark Henry, who's still, for some reason, hired at WWE. It's pretty impressive that he can pick up the Big Show and slam him. But he's the world's strongest man. I kind of expect that now. It was just a way to get Big Show out of the match.
Okay, Corey?
It started off strong, and then Mark Henry comes out, and Mark Henry dumps Big Show through a table. And then the rest of the match just went right to hell after that. They should be building up Alberto Del Rio, but this match did not need to happen, and the ending did not need to happen as well. I did not like this match.
All right, I guess nobody did, but let's see if you like the Intercontinental title match better, because in their second pay-per-view match, Ezekiel Jackson defeated Wade Barrett for the Intercontinental title, made it seem like a big deal, and I'm sure you liked that as an old-school fan, Midge.
I do. I did like it. I don't particularly like Ezekiel Jackson by himself. I feel like he needs a mouthpiece, a manager type of person for him to go anywhere. He's very one-dimensional. He's a big, muscular guy, and that's about it. He's got no attitude. He's got no charisma. He's got no personality. He's got no reason for me to be behind him at all.
I kind of like Ezekiel Jackson winning the title. I mean, it's different. It was a good match. Wade Barrett, I think it'll be a lot of fun having him chase the title again.
In yet another pay-per-view rematch, CM Punk defeated Rey Mysterio Jr.
Actually, this was one of the best matches on the card, probably the best match on the card. I think that CM Punk was really on his A-game for this, and it set everything up for the following night's Raw, so this was a lot of fun to watch.
Some people were saying that it was the best match they've ever had. I remember their match at Armageddon the other year being really good. Do you think that this was the best one they've ever had, Will Vafides?
All of them are almost identically the same. I mean, as far
really?
as...
I don't think so, but
well,
right, go ahead.
Let me rephrase that. As far as the quality of the match, let's go with that. Not exactly like they don't look the same. They always deliver. It just works. Like, you know, it's like Bret Hart versus Perfect. It just works every time. It just works so great together. It's too bad they were never a tag team, because they were probably pretty good as a tag team too. But yeah, this is definitely a good match. Definitely the best match on the card. Punk delivers again for the Straight Edge Society, who I am proudly a part of.
Well, Randy Orton yet again defeats Christian on pay-per-view, this time with a screwy finish. Christian had his legs underneath the ropes, and the ref didn't see it, and then Orton hits him after the match. Almost seems like they're both kind of turning heel, but let's see what you think. Midge?
Hopefully this whole past month with Christian and Orton is just setting Christian up for his heel future run. Just kind of keeping it in the back of my mind, okay, this is long-term plan. This is a long-term plan. Because right now it's just not working for me right now. I'm just hoping that there's a big payoff with Christian in the end for it.
Brett's not feeling it. Are you, Corey?
This is not a match that should have happened. I mean...
Apparently you think nothing should have happened on this past Sunday.
Well, no, Daniel Bryan should have been in every match.
No, it's not that. Randy Orton has IED and a concussion, and although he may have passed his cute little Impact concussion test, what is that test anyways? This man walked in with a concussion. Halfway through the match, you can hear him complaining to the referee, I have a huge migraine. Why did this match continue? This man was clearly not ready to wrestle. The screwy finish didn't really do anything other than bury Christian, because after Christian complained, hey, my foot was under the rope, what happened? Randy drops him on his face. Absolutely terrible. This was a slow and sloppy match. I don't see why Christian could not have just gotten the damn belt in this match. Let him have the damn belt.
Don't hold your breath, Corey. Jack Swagger and Evan Bourne actually got on pay-per-view. Kind of surprising. Will Vafides, thoughts on that match?
Definitely wasn't a match I was expecting to see. It just came out of nowhere. I always like that. You know, sometimes I like when we see some surprise matches. Not much to say about the match. It felt like a Raw-type matchup, but it was still good. Bourne wins. It's good to see Evan Bourne winning on pay-per-view. He did it in a way that was different from Raw, where he actually got him a nice little roll-up. It was good.
I mean, they couldn't have filled this time with more fake Obama skits? Corey?
This was an okay match, but definitely nobody in the crowd was told about it, so this definitely felt like somebody in the back went, holy crap, all of the matches were really short tonight. Quick, make up another match. Hurry. So this was just thrown together quite literally.
Who cares if it was thrown
minute.
together? How'd you feel about it?
It was all right. I'm glad that Evan Bourne won.
Let's move on to the main event. R-Truth, whose gimmick lately I've been really digging. I love this heel R-Truth stuff, the little Jimmy and everything. He gets his pay-per-view main event title match against Cena. A lot of people pissed that he didn't win, not just because he's black, but because apparently Cena is having some nagging injuries. Bill Treadway's been saying that his pay-per-view main events haven't really been very good in a while. He should have some time off, heal up, come back, win the belt, face The Rock next year. I don't know. I thought it was at least a neat idea, but how did it pan out in actuality, Corey? R-Truth Cena title match.
Most of this match, it looked like R-Truth was going to win, and I was happy about that. I wanted to see R-Truth win. I wanted to see anybody whose name is not Cena get this title. R-Truth is putting the beating on Cena, and it looks really good. He comes outside the ring. He talks to a little Jimmy in the crowd. Little Jimmy hurls ice water in his face. R-Truth is now down for the count and dead to the world. Super Cena gets him 1, 2, 3. What the fuck? Who booked this? If I was a promoter and my booker had just done this to me, I would be looking for a new booker right now.
I'm looking for a new panelist right now. Will Vafides, thoughts on the R-Truth match?
R-Truth looked really good in this match as far as dominating John Cena, that's for sure. He had a lot of control in the match. He was nice, slow-paced. But he was definitely reacting to the crowd. Good reaction. I actually liked the ending of the match. A lot of people didn't like it, but I actually was a fan. He's been attacking these fans like crazy, and it's nice to see that a little Make-A-Wish kid gives them a little 7-Up right in the face and gets the win and continues his conspiracy or his Confederate views. And I liked it. I love this R-Truth character, especially the next night on Raw where they had Miz and Christian all having conspiracy issues, and the match wasn't great, but I think the overall story was R-Truth getting hit in the face with the 7-Up. It was all built up for that. I still thought it was good. It was a good way to make R-Truth look like he kind of got screwed, like the little Jimmy beat him, not really John Cena. So it was strong in the end.
Midge, I want to hear your thoughts on little Jimmy.
Little Jimmy. Well, I thought they could have used a better kid, but they got the job done. I actually liked the end of this match, just like Will did. It's something new. It hasn't happened before. And just like Will said, it goes along with the storyline. He's been abusing the fans and all that stuff. And Corey said that the water knocked him out, and then John Cena pinned him. No, it didn't. He threw water in his face. He made a little dramatic reaction. Cena picked him up and added to the adjustment, and that was the end of the match. It was a good finish. Like, what do you want to happen? Oh, by the way, it was vodka, so it stung a little bit.
All right. Well, I want to touch on Raw a little bit, but I do see that Royce from California is on the line, and I appreciate a West Coast caller, so let's go to you before we wrap up with Raw. What's on your mind?
Well, I didn't really see Capital Punishment, but I'm kind of hot and cold on the two main events. I'm hot that Christian lost because, Christian no. And I'm kind of cold that, even though I like Cena, I want R-Truth to win because of when first black WWE champion, but of Man Dream, but I knew that was going to happen.
First 100% black WWE champion.
Yeah,
he's not 50% like Barack Obama or Rock.
Well, and the whole Raw thing where they kind of announced, I just wanted to ask you, do you think that it was really a mess up, that they messed up the voting, or did they actually rig it? Because there's a lot of people saying that they actually rigged it, but this is just an excuse they use, that the votes were messed up.
I think they're making such a thing about all the mistakes that happened that it sounds legit, and from anybody who has ever been in WWE, when referring to past events like Cyber Sunday, Taboo Tuesday, whatever, any sort of voting thing, that it did seem legit. And I also don't think, and as cynical as I may be, and it seems like, oh, they just chose Mason Ryan because they want him, I don't think it would be the case, because that would be fucking people's money over as far as texting goes. So I don't think they'd want to open themselves up in any sort of way like that as far as fraud. I mean, they just got audited by the state of Connecticut for some unemployment unpaid, and it was only like $7,000 whatever dollars, and they were paying it in dispute and contention. Like they didn't even want to pay that. This is like a multi-million, billion, whatever dollar company, and they didn't want to pay that. So as cheap as they can be sometimes, like we talked about on the Invasion show, I don't think that they would want to open themselves up for any sort of thing like this. I don't think they'd intentionally just take the money from people texting and then just not even pay attention to the results at all.
Yeah, it just seems fake because you would think they want Sin Cara to fight because this is that like kind of Triple H's like pet project kind of thing, like Randy Orton.
Well, his name is attached to him, yeah.
Yeah, it's like Randy Orton 3.0 kind of. Like another click baby. I don't know. So definitely different.
Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time, and we only have a few minutes left, so I do want to touch on that Raw that Royce was bringing up. They were going to do Sin Cara and Matt Bourne as a makeup, essentially, I think, this coming Raw on Monday. But they've been doing 3-hour Raws for a couple weeks in a row. I think it's amazingly fucked up that they did a Long Island show and didn't use Zack Ryder. The rumor is that Vince McMahon is doing it because he just resents the idea that the internet likes him so much. Big fucking deal. I'm not going to push him, which, when you do stuff out of bitterness and to spite people, that always makes you money, like the Invasion thing I just mentioned. On Zack Ryder, really quick, I find it amazing because he's not the only one that there are wrestlers on this roster with how many writers and how much money that they can't think of something for people to do. So they go on the fucking internet and on YouTube with their own skits and stuff and get themselves over. Why are they paying these writers again? I don't get it. But that's the previous Raw on Long Island. This past Raw was Power to the People, which, according to Error, wasn't the case. And votes didn't really turn up. But Will Brooks, you're in our chat room every Monday night, so we only have a few minutes left, so brief thoughts on Raw.
I find it hard to believe that Raw, where the people get to choose who wrestles, didn't have Zack Ryder on it. I think if we had to really people choose it, I think he would have been on there. So obviously, I think there's conspiracy behind it too.
Raw last night, with the exception of 2 matches, was pretty boring. Without CM Punk and Bryan, I really wouldn't have had a reason to watch. As for the not booking Zack Ryder thing, it shows absolute laziness, and it's really asinine of Vince McMahon to pull Zack Ryder just because he can't handle Zack Ryder having a YouTube. With the 3.1 rating that last night's Raw got, now's not the time to fuck around with the fans. Put Zack Ryder on and put him in a good spotlight. Don't have him job out.
The talk of the trade is all about CM Punk and his announcement that he's leaving WWE. I think there's good moment there. As far as the Raw goes, wasn't anything special. I think the main event and the 2 out of 3 falls match was really good, and so was the CM Punk, Alberto Del Rio, and Rey Mysterio match. Power to the people, which doesn't work.
That's because people can be swayed. Anyway, Midge, real quick thoughts on Raw.
The interaction between Christian, R-Truth, and The Miz was really funny. Maybe the possibility, you're going to hate me for this one, with Zack Ryder is they continue to leave him off television, to continue to piss you guys off even more, so he gets even more popular, his anti-Raw campaign or whatever.
Reverse psychology, you mean?
Exactly. Maybe Vince is playing you smart guys, is just what I'm saying. And congratulations to the most dominant female wrestler in the business, Kelly Kelly, on her first title win.
Yes, the biggest whore gets her biggest title. And we're running out of time, so continue the talk on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Sign up for our message board, leave comments wherever you're listening, share, rate, comment, and subscribe. Sorry to some of the callers who did not get through or the thing didn't work. We'll get to more callers next time because we're coming back in 7 days. A week from today, we're going to be covering ROH's iPay-Per-View Best in the World 2011. I will be co-hosting the pre-show, last I knew of, on Sunday, so check that out. We're also going to be talking about WCW's Best of Monday Nitro DVD that WWE has put out. Definitely check that out. You can pick it up at our Amazon store at WrestlingRoundtable.com. Anything on Amazon you can get through our Amazon store and also get our T-shirt at our shop, along with Pro Wrestling Respect DVDs. Downloads of Pro Wrestling Respect now at High Spots and GoFightLive.tv. We're also going to be covering the best and worst attire in pro wrestling, following up on that topic, and the forgotten gems, following up on some of our latest YouTube videos, and we're going to be covering more in the latest of pro wrestling and mixed martial arts as we do. Thank you for calling and listening. Just remember, please comment, share, rate, and subscribe. So for the panel of Will Brooks, Will Valfides, Rodney LeConte, Brett Midge Simonello, Coriander Ake, I'm Eric Santamaria. Thank you, and join us on WrestlingRoundtable.com.